I have got this 10-year-old photo book project that I can finally move forward on. And the thing that was holding me back was, well, just I guess not knowing what the photo book was going to be about. My family and I took this road trip for a couple of weeks. It was about 10 years ago. We had toddlers. This road trip, in a comedic sort of way, blew up in our face. We were totally naive, me in particular, about what it would be like to travel with a couple of toddlers. I'm a photographer. I wanted to capture the beauty of the scenery, life on the road, and it did not work out the way I expected. However, there is definitely a ton of material here for a photo book. I've got like 8,000 photos, and the question is, how do I narrow it down? How do I make a photo book out of this? And the first step is to come up with a premise. So, in a sense, the photo book is of our road trip, but that's not enough to narrow it down. I've got 8,000 photos of our road trip. The question is, how do I make these photos about something? And so it occurred to me after some time that really the one in looking back on this trip, the wonderful part is the chaos and the beauty. The fact that as I scroll through these photos, there are definitely moments of chaos, and there are definitely a few moments of beauty throughout this trip. And so then the premise for the photo book is to alternate between scenes of chaos and scenes of beauty. Or another way of looking at it might be scenes of fantasy, like the beauty of life on the road, and scenes of reality, trying to feed your toddlers, or what do you do when they're overtired and they're crying, and how the heck do I do this as a photographer? How do I come up with scenes of beauty? I mean, this is not a beautiful photo. This disappoints me as a photographer, but that's exactly what I want this photo book to be about. So when you have a premise, then you know not just what your photos are of, but what they are actually about. And you have a guiding principle. If I know that this photo book is going to alternate between chaos and beauty, fantasy and reality, you can see how I've already begun to sort of narrow down the photos. Now, I'm not really narrowing them down yet. I'm just kind of flagging the ones that are standing out to me in some way. And so, we've got some of these moments here, stuff like eating off the motel room floor and playing in parks and jumping on beds and transport trucks. I mean, how do I take a photo like this? I don't even know why I took this photo, but how do I take a photo like this and incorporate it into the book? Well, maybe I don't, but I have so many pictures like this that are just blah. And I mean, this is reality, right? When you're on a road trip, probably 90% of the trip is blah, but then you have those highlight moments. And I want to capture that in this book. And of course, as I create a photo book, there are many different ways I can do it. And I definitely want to have a lot of fold out pages in this book. And so as I'm looking at this stuff, I'm already starting to come up with ideas of how to alternate between the reality of the trip and, the fantasy, so to speak. And, my premise will be that thread that binds the book together in terms of having some sort of deeper substance or theme to it. And it really is my inspiration, because now that I know what this book is about, now that I know it's about reality and fantasy and contrasting chaos and beauty, that I now have my inspiration. It's like I have a built-in muse for this project. I don't have to wait for my muse to show up. I don't need to wait for inspiration. I've got it. The premise builds inspiration into the project. And also, I know that as I go through these photos, I'm going to flag way more photos that I can possibly use. And the premise will help me to judge as I call these photos as I split it in half and split it in half again and split it in half again until I end up with just the final frames that I'll include in this photo book or zine, then the premise helps me to judge between one photo or another. I know if that photo belongs because it is part of the premise, or it strengthens the premise of the book, or it weakens the premise of the book. It may be in line with what the book is about, but it doesn't necessarily strengthen it. It kind of weakens it. I'll be able to tell when I've already hit this beat, this plot beat, so to speak, or this beat of my premise. I'll know if I've hit that beat, if I'm hitting it too much. You don't want to hear the same note over and over. So the power of a premise to help you start and complete a project, I think 99% of the power is in the premise.